we good to go?
They are working out.
Call the the public hearing and regular city commission meeting of July 13th, 2021 to order. May we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I was afraid we might have forgotten that because we had divided it up on Zoom, so
We
we haven't done it all together. Amy, will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Budnick?
I was going to say here in Pleasant Ridge, Michigan.
You don't have to.
Here.
Commissioner Perry?
Here.
Commissioner Scott?
Here.
Commissioner Wall?
Here.
Mayor Metzger?
Here. If we seem a little strange, it's the first time in, what, 15 months, I think? Yeah.
Right.
Group hug. Before we start, I wanted to make a change to the agenda. We're going to drop item 9. There have been a number of issues that have come up regarding the fun run that we still need to discuss a little bit further before we bring it to the commission meeting. So I'm going to ask if there's a motion to amend the agenda by removing item 9.
Mayor, I move we adjust the agenda by removing item 9.
Is there support?
Support.
Any questions or concerns? Okay, may we vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick?
Yes.
Commissioner Wall? Yes. Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. With that, we will move on. First item is public discussion, items not on the agenda. If you have anything to bring forward that's not on the agenda, please step forward with your name and your address.
My name is Jeremy Noonan. I live at 60 Woodward Heights Boulevard. I moved into the community in 2013 in December. I'm a college professor, so I have the summers off, which allows me time to recoup, re-energize, and really kind of see the daily ongoings in the neighborhood. I first want to acknowledge the efforts of the city of Pleasant Ridge, the police, and their visibility on Woodward Heights. I just want to say thank you. I'm here this evening to share my observations and to express my concerns regarding the excessive traffic on Woodward Heights. It's estimated that we receive about 3,300 vehicles per day, and roughly about 50 of those are large vehicles. And I want to illuminate what I mean by large vehicles. Construction vehicles frequent Woodward Heights. I often see tandem trailer gravel trucks, cement trucks, trucks with lowboy trailers hauling construction vehicles like tractors, forklifts, and small trucks. Other trucks include those hauling pallets of drywall, plywood, building materials. And so by the looks of it, I can say that the construction industry is doing very well. It's doing very well in here today. Construction vehicles, like commercial trucks that are not doing business on Woodward Heights or in the Pleasant Ridge community are continuous. We see FedEx semis, paper shredding trucks, food and beverage trucks, DTE Energy, Consumers Energy, tree service trucks, towing wood chippers, or backhoes on lowboys. Tanker trucks hauling fuel and vehicles carrying compressed gases like propane, welding gases have been observed on my street. Drivers of these vehicles require special endorsements on their CDL to haul these types of chemicals. Would you feel comfortable with explosives in such proximity to your home or your family? In addition to hearing, feeling, and smelling the traffic on Woodward Heights, I am concerned as to the damage of the weight of these vehicles on the ground, the road, and potentially the foundation of my home and the connected utilities. Our collective concern on Woodward Heights with the high volume of vehicles and large trucks on Woodward Heights as a cut-through requires a plan supported by the city that extends beyond the minor traffic test that's been going on the past few years. If it's true that the city has approved pinch points on Woodward Heights last fall, where is the plan moving forward? Are the residents of Woodward Heights going to see pinch points prior to the traffic calming measures set forth to happen on Woodward Avenue next April? My last comment. On July 2nd, Channel 4 aired the grievances that neighbors and I regarding the traffic situation on Woodward Heights. During that interview, a representative of the City Commission stated, "It's actually hard to find concrete work in the area this year." And I have to say, concrete trucks are abundant on Woodward Heights, often cutting through to do work contracted by adjacent cities. The residents of Woodward Heights have been expressing their concerns for several years now regarding the increased traffic, aggressive drivers, and heavy commercial trucks passing through our residential street. We feel dismissed by the lack of a plan of action. What is the plan to improve our situation? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Doing?
Hi.
Good, how are you?
Good. Charlie Kuhn, 25 Elm Park Boulevard. I'm here also to talk about streets a little bit, Woodward in particular. I like the Woodward idea. I like what it's about. I think that it's all very well intentioned. I think that the studies were well thought out and everything else, but with every study, there's unintended consequences. And with that, there's an easy way to find those out, and that is through a test. And I think I speak on behalf of a lot of people in the city. I don't know if they're here now, but I've just had my own anecdotal conversations. Not everyone's comfortable coming up and speaking. So I feel like I can do that on behalf of some people, lots of people, not one or two. It's been said here several times, paint is cheap, barrels are cheap, cones, whatever. I think it makes perfect sense. Let's test it out. Give it a few months. We have time. Let's see where the traffic goes and just see what happens. It may work out beautifully, and if it does, wonderful. I'm a new dad myself. I want safety for my child. I just moved here, so I'm pretty vested in the community, and I think it just makes a lot of sense to do this and avoid just to see what the cut-through traffic means.
Charlie, what project are you talking about?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Woodward Height, or not the Woodward Height, the Woodward, narrowing Woodward with the bike lanes.
Where?
Specifically. Through Pleasant Ridge and Ferndale, but we don't have anything saying that, so I think it makes sense in the Pleasant
So
Ridge
you're
section.
You're talking about the joint TAP application that
Yeah,
Ferndale
yeah,
and Pleasant Ridge put in for
Correct.
the 8 Mile to 696?
yes,
Okay.
correct. Thanks for clarifying that, Jim. So, I just impressed upon you, it's easy, it's cheap. There seems almost no reason why we wouldn't do it. I mean, it really doesn't. So, I'll speak on behalf of many, many concerned neighbors that I have about that. So let's test it, figure it out. If it works beautifully, then, and it's just a small uptick in traffic, because it will change traffic patterns. It's unequivocally going to do that. We all know that. So I ask that you guys give that serious consideration. And if you're not going to test it, maybe you could give us a reason why you're not going to test it, given that the cost is essentially zero.
Okay, I'd love to.
Sure, please.
So, the cost is, with anything MDOT, absolutely not zero.
Okay.
Even to do a test. When we did a test project, you remember probably you were here in 2015 at the curve off of Woodward onto Main Street. We did that test project.
Yep, I remember that.
Yeah, just that test project. We got a grant to do that, but it was $10,000. It was pretty negligible. It worked. Nothing really was impacted by it. The traffic study we did when that test was going on showed that it was feasible and it was fine. When we started working with MDOT to make just that small segment for a block and a half from really north of Devonshire to Woodward to 696, using nothing but paint. The cost estimate we had from the engineer after MDOT got done putting their requirements on there was $175,000
Okay.
for paint
Yeah.
and for other things MDOT makes you do. So
Sure.
to do a test for 8 Mile to 696, to do an MDOT compliant test and to get through the approval process, which would probably take about 8 months to get through an approval process, even for a test, because MDOT's going to require us to do all of the same things for that study that we would have to do to make it permanent. Then to do the test, if you extrapolate kind of that $175,000 cost to what MDOT would require.
Have
it's
you
not
got a
just-
quote for it and asked MDOT, given the extraordinary circumstances? And they are a little bit. It's wholesale fashion changing a thoroughfare through our city in Ferndale and the region, really. So has there been a conversation with MDOT? Have you or the other city council members had that and had it gotten a cost for it?
We're right in the middle right now. We've done traffic studies.
No, I'm asking about a test specifically.
Well, you're not gonna test something that long on Woodward.
Why not?
Because MDOT, the cost to do that.
Right. I mean, have you asked MDOT?
The cost to do a test is pretty much equivalent to the cost of doing an actual installation. The TAP grant was.
A concrete wall? I don't think so. I don't mean to be
We're not-
combative.
there's
I'm
No,
just asking.
the grant we applied for for the TAP grant to make it permanent really isn't permanent. It's kind of an interim solution. It's mostly using paint to do the bike lanes on Woodward. So what MDOT is doing is a resurfacing project, an asphalt
Yeah.
resurfacing.
No,
project.
I
Hang
understand.
on,
I've looked
let
at it
me-
and
let me-
I'm on board.
So MDOT's
Frankly, I
doing-
like the project. I don't hate the project. I'm just,
MDOT's doing an asphalt resurfacing project next year.
right.
And so the TAP grant was to add in moving the parking lanes out and then with using mostly paint and those temporary bollards at intersections.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, what is happening is, if you were going to do a test project, that is what would be put in place next year, and that would be an interim solution. So it wouldn't be concrete. MDOT's not moving curbs. MDOT's not reconstructing anything.
Right, but I'm talking about,
Our TAP grant for $3.5 million is essentially for paint
right.
and a little bit of concrete work. So we are more or less doing a test project that someday would be made permanent, and it's costing us $3.5 million with the TAP grant. That's
Right.
what's out of our pocket.
Has there been any conversation though with MDOT to run a test in the sense of just a stripe? I mean, stripe it down and be done. I know I'm oversimplifying it, but I'm just asking, has that been asked to MDOT?
No,
Okay.
but I don't know that the permanent project could be taken out if it ends up in disaster. MDOT's
yeah.
had that happen before.
Yeah.
We don't believe it would, but, it could be
Yeah.
removed.
It's a lot harder to remove it than put it in my experience with these types of projects. So I'm just, I'm aware of Ridge and Poplar Park, those are going to be used more because that area is going to be truncated as well. So if there's an easy way, I mean, you can use barrels, just remove the lane, see what happens, I mean, and then again, maybe something to ask MDOT, say, hey, this is a big deal. What can we do here? Never hurts to ask. Sometimes they say, yeah, you know what, maybe we can accommodate you. So
So let me ask a question. So seriously,
thank
Howard,
you.
good?
I'm all set,
Thanks,
thanks.
Howard.
Thank you.
Howard, come up to the,
so seriously, that right lane is only gonna be blocked off by
Nate?
paint, no curbs or anything? Is that what you're telling us?
The parking is gonna move out, and the parked cars are gonna be the buffer. and the
Okay, so
protection.
that's gonna be where the paint is then, where the
Correct.
parked cars are.
So you move the parking lane out, the parked cars are there, because nobody's gonna ride their bike if you're right next to traffic on.
Yeah, because I was just thinking if they only do paint, they're just gonna drive around the paint to pass
Correct.
people on the right.
Correct, so it's,
Right.
you'll do some some of those reflective bollards probably at the intersections, and then the parking lane moves out.
Okay.
And then you ride, the existing, parking lane becomes the bike lane.
Okay, so if in the future, if this becomes a problem for the residential streets, it can be easily changed back.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Howard, your address?
60 Woodward Heights, I'm sorry.
Mayor, if I could go
Yes.
back, I wanted to
Yeah.
ask Mr. Noonan a question,
Please.
and I'm glad you came.
Thank you.
Woodward Heights is a very difficult problem. You acknowledge the police patrol that more than anywhere else. in the
Well, they
city.
have the past 3 weeks, but prior to that, it's been very intermittent. And we do appreciate the visibility, but it needs to be continued, not just
Right.
a few weeks before a city town meeting or
Well-
anything like that.
What I will say is enforcement is not something that ever solves an underlying problem.
Exactly. So I'm looking for
So-
solutions.
You're looking for solutions. I guess I'm curious, what would you like to see?
Well, my understanding is last spring, last summer, you were approved for pinch points.
Well,
Is that going to happen?
let's-
Is that
let's-
considered?
Let's clarify what that was. After we did the test projects, the pinch points at the intersections were not approved. The residents who came to that meeting, or it was a virtual meeting, but the residents who showed up didn't like them. The only one that was approved was a bump out by the alley at the west end. So just after the alley, a bump out where that parking lane is. The pinch points and those other interventions were rejected, more or less, by the residents. And, are those going to stop the truck traffic? I don't know that they would. But I am curious what you would, I guess we're looking for suggestions, because
I mean, I'd love to route the traffic down Sylvan because it does go directly across Woodward, no problem, but I don't think our mayor would like that very much. But the reality is Woodward Heights is considered a cut-through, even by the council members up here. And the reality is it's dangerous. There's something needs to be done, and it's not just the police that are going to solve that. If it really is about, I think narrowing the street would probably help. However, I think honestly what would really end it is capping off each end of the street. But that's one solution. There's probably 10 more that could be discussed, but there's always going to be somebody that doesn't want to embody it, approve it, think that it's really kind of in their best interest. But right now, what's not in our best interest on Woodward Heights is the fact that we have the amount of people blowing through stop signs at walkways, the amount of heavy trucks carrying who knows what's in them half the time. And the commercial trucks that are going through there is not really, it's just not pleasant. It's not pleasant in Pleasant Ridge on Woodward Heights at the moment. I bought the house in December, moved in December, and so I didn't really know what the ongoings was at that time. I moved here from Georgia for a job. Had I really kind of looked at the area back in 2013, I don't think the traffic would have been as bad, and it wouldn't really affect my decision to purchase the home. However, now I think it does affect the property values, the way that things have been rerouted and how 9 Mile and 10 Mile has been shrunk down to really kind of slow traffic. It's definitely sped traffic up. So we're on the receiving end of that, and it's just really unpleasant to be there with all that.
Can I ask you a question? I don't know if you were part of this or remember this, but really, because it is a tough situation, but a way that I always thought, and it's been proven, is do the chicane route where make it hard for the trucks to get down there, right? Like have people park on both sides of the streets. It's something that we could try for free, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, but couldn't we try it?
I think the reality is the width of that street is narrower than most avenues within Woodward Heights, so I don't think that's even legally possible to do that with two sides.
Isn't it legally possible?
We can only park currently on one side. We have a bike lane that's a foot wide. That's not really a bike lane. It's just kind of this.
So Woodward Heights is 30 feet wide, the cross section. It's actually wider. Most streets are 27 feet wide. I only assumed that it was made 30 feet wide when it was reconstructed, either because it's always been that way, because it's always been a collector street. It's always been a connector in and out of town. It's always had higher traffic volumes. Has it gotten worse? I don't know.
Well, I can tell you it has gotten worse, and I live there. And
So
I do know that
So I trust you. Now, it is 30 feet wide. You can have parking on both sides of the street. And we've talked about this when we had the town hall meeting, where we were talking through what the options to test were. Commissioner Wall is correct. A lot of your traffic calming measures try to increase friction on a street to slow down traffic and to discourage it from moving through there.
well, I think
So with allowing parking on both sides of the street, what you end up doing there is creating a yield condition where chicanes, pinch points, the parked cars naturally create those all up and down the street and make it more difficult to drive. Birmingham has parking on both sides of the street on 24-foot wide streets because a parked car takes up 7 to 8 feet from the curb. So on a 24-foot wide street, if you have a parked car and a parked car, then you've got enough room to kind of sneak through. Now 24 feet with parking on both sides is extreme. Most of our streets are 27 feet wide, and most of our streets in the city used to have parking on both sides of the street. So that is one way of always, for free, slowing down traffic and seeing what happens. So, when we say we're willing, the city, I think our position is we're willing to try. We proactively tried a number of things after discussing them with the residents. We then discussed with the residents of Woodward Heights what we were going to make permanent. The stop sign at Bermuda you referenced, it creates a lot of noise, a lot of vibration, a lot of issues for you living right there at the stop sign, because all those trucks stopping and starting create a huge amount of noise. Thanks. removing that stop sign, because there's only 80 cars a day that come down Bermuda. That stop sign's completely unwarranted from a traffic engineering standpoint. But again, that was one of the things that the residents of Woodward Heights said they absolutely wanted that stop sign back. Now, we know people blow through that stop sign because all of the traffic engineering research and everything over the years says that if you have a stop sign that's not justified, drivers end up thinking, this is stupid. I never see a car stop there. This is a stupid stop sign. It's wasting my time. And they blow through it. So a better place for that stop sign would be at other Bermuda by the Heights Market, because at least there's, something going on there. We're willing to move that stop sign. But what we've said is, talk to your neighbors. We don't want to start just doing things based on, one resident who comes to a meeting. We thank you very much. I very much appreciate you actually coming and talking to us. But talk to your neighbors. Moving that stop sign might help a lot of the noise and vibration issues you suffer, because a truck just at speed is less impactful. Parking on both sides of the street. We'll try it tomorrow and see what happens. You talk about test projects
But
and
what
it being
if it
for free.
worked? What if it worked?
I mean, what if?
No,
you
but
know?
I mean, it's science, right? I mean, it's free. We
And
could
that
try
is
it.
We haven't tried it yet. So,
Hey, I mean, I'm all for it. Like, I'm all for something that will improve the situation,
Right.
but a continuation of more tests that don't really fix the problem is not really
But we don't know if that's going to fix a
It's never
problem or
been
not.
tested.
I mean,
exactly. Yeah.
It's easy to say make the truck stop, but
How?
also how? And if we're not willing to try things,
Yeah, it is.
We
I
won't
mean,
know.
it's a residential street. It's treated like it's a freeway most of the time, and I really, I don't know. I don't know what to say, other than we can't please every neighbor on that street regarding the idea of pinch points. I personally think it'd be a great idea. I'd like to move forward with it, frankly, myself, or just capping off each side of the street so there's no cut through at all, or going
That's
right
not
down
gonna happen.
Sylvan. I mean, either way, I'm happy with that, but.
I'm
I
sure we
think
get a
some
whole bunch of
solutions.
Sylvan neighbors at the next meeting.
Exactly. I'm sure at some point though we really need to find something that's going to help improve the situation. Between the traffic, the smell, all of it. It's just
I think we are willing to try anything. We're just looking for the residents to tell us what we want to try. The options are out there. Let's try parking on both sides of the street. Closing the street, that's a tougher one. Because, what do you do with Fairwood and Sylvan then?
yeah.
And
Maybe
and
they'll
those,
get a little flavor of what it's like to live on our street. So I mean, either way, I'm fine with directing it down Sylvan. So this sounds like a great idea. No, I mean, honestly, I'm not an expert in traffic conditions or any sort of mobility regarding like navigating around a city. But I would probably expect that, a city manager would probably have information that could provide a solution that would work.
that's what we've
Which
been
you
trying to
remember,
do.
we did the whole town hall, like in 2019.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
well, here's another solution, parking on both sides of the
Hey.
street. And we're still waiting for a petition, we
Some
don't-
sort of
we're hearing-
information.
We hear one person here,
Yeah,
one person
yeah.
there. You have an entire street that we're still waiting for half of your
Consensus,
residents to
yeah.
come up with some ideas.
Yeah.
And agree on something, because pinch points, people then complain they can't back out of their driveway.
Yeah.
I mean, there's one excuse after another,
Yeah.
and so we're asking the residents of Woodward Heights
Yes.
to get together as a group, not as individuals,
Yeah.
right around a stop sign, but actually as a group and come up with some suggestions.
What
As
would-
Jim said, we're willing to.
What
to
would the
try.
ideal percentage of consensus of a plan be to actually move forward with? Like, what would that have to entail? 50% of the street?
Yeah, we're
80, 90? Like,
If you could get 50% of your residents, we would.
I would accept less.
Okay.
I would suggest. I don't know, 50% is tough.
I'm happy to get.
I
And
mean,
you know what? If you get a group of residents in one portion of the street
yeah,
who want to try something for that portion of the street,
yeah.
right? So, I don't think there's any hard and fast.
I mean,
It's
I'm
just-
reminded every year that, it's an R2 zone, right? It's rentals. And so I kind of feel like there's this era of, we kind of don't care about that so much. And so I live on that street. There's a lot of rentals around me. And so getting consensus of people that don't even live there but own the property. And so that's where I just want to know, like, what is the percentage that I need to kind of validate a solution here? Because at this point, it's here we are 2 years later talking about the same thing. We've done a couple tests in the middle of a pandemic that the numbers didn't really add up to the reality of what right now is. And so I just really want to have some sort of solution in the near future, not coming back here month after month, year after year, talking about the same old traffic issue. So
The only issue, I think, what it comes down to is that the only things, in my experience, with traffic complaints, is whenever there's a complaint about traffic on the street, if people think about, you know, when they're in their house or on the sidewalk watching the cars go by, and that's one thing. But then when people think about, oh, wait, when I get in my car and I have to drive, now that's gonna be really annoying, I don't want that. So the solutions inconvenience also the residents who have to
Oh,
drive by that
absolutely.
every day. And that's often the breakdown. Parking on both sides of the street is the best natural traffic calming free solution you can have. And nobody ever wants it because I think they think about when I get in my car and I have to drive down that street now, oh, that's gonna be
Yeah.
annoying. So that's really kind of the issue is that, you know, short of closing Woodward Heights and moving the problems to a different street, and, you know, Woodward Heights has been a connection to the outside world forever. Sylvan and Fairwood have not. So now the residents who bought their houses on those streets, and now you're just gonna throw the problem on them, is that fair? So, I mean, we have to consider all residents
Yeah.
and something that's fair and
Oh,
sort of equitable
absolutely.
to everybody. So, you know, people hated the speed bumps when we tested out the speed bump last year as part of the traffic calming project. That's another one that people, oh, we
Noise
just we
pollution.
need to put in 6 speed bumps on Woodward Heights. But then people hate the speed bumps on Woodward, you know, it's in front of their house. I hope you understand, you know, the
oh,
challenge.
I heard the
this
speed
is.
bumps. I know how aggravating they were.
So, you know, I don't think that this is any, and I'm just speaking for myself, I don't think we're being dismissive of the problem, but I think it's just one that's,
No, I think it's
needs to be
just important to
readdressed.
say, I mean,
Yeah.
we actually, we're not discounting how you feel. We know that this is how you feel
Yeah.
and at your house. The challenge we've been, you know, trying to address is that not all of the neighbors feel the same about everything that we've suggested.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
in the end, we end up with like half people wanting something and another half wanting something else. And so it's hard to make progress on the street. And that's
Yeah.
why in all of the conversations I've had, I've said, please just do a petition.
Yeah.
And as Jim has suggested, we're probably flexible on the numbers because it would just be nice to see, you know, a nice sized amount of people agreeing on what you think might work.
Yeah.
A solution as big as closing the road will require just about everyone on the
Yeah.
street to agree because people will lose their yards. In fact, I think people even on Bermuda and Indiana will probably lose lawn space because we still have to get a fire truck and a truck delivering a refrigerator down Woodward Heights.
Yeah.
And it has a turning radius, and so there's an engineering problem to make that work. But at the end of the day, we'd love to hear from more neighbors to
Yeah,
understand
yeah,
what
I
you
understand
agree
that.
on, so that if we do the work, we don't result in a situation where half of the neighbors say, no, that really isn't what we want.
Yeah, I understand that.
we have our traffic calming manual, all of these options are in there. Speed bumps, sure, if you get 50% of the people on the street saying we want speed bumps, we'll put them in. Parking on both sides of the street, it's free, let's test it out. Move the stop sign from our Bermuda to the Woodward Heights Bermuda. We've got a traffic control order ready to go for that. It's just, it was restored at its current location because that's what we heard from the town hall meeting last week. People can't cross the street. We need the stop sign so we can cross the street. We'll move it. Just talk to some neighbors and show a little bit of support for it, you know, so that we know that this is something that has some broad support on the street.
So 50% plus.
Or less.
I mean,
less.
or
We're
less,
saying
you know,
less. We're
moving,
saying-
moving the stop
Collective
sign,
effort.
moving the
Okay,
stop sign
we can work on it.
Woodward, from this Bermuda to other Bermuda, just talk to the people at
And
at the east end of the street.
Yeah.
That's
And if it's,
acceptable.
you know, if it's an issue of renters versus owners, just go to the owners. Don't,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
you don't have to worry about the renters.
Okay.
So we're asking for your help on this, I guess, a little bit.
Okay. No, I mean, hey, at this point during the summer, like, yeah, it's very apparent there's a problem here, and I'm not really one to kind of get civically involved in these types of matters, but at this point I am, and and I've been hearing about it, you know, for a couple of years now, nonstop. So I kind of feel like it's time to really, you know, get some solutions like in place. But thanks for the recommendation for the parking on both sides of the street.
You're welcome.
I just don't know where people will have to bike now. So, I mean, it's always opening up another problem, and so
Yeah,
that's where
Yeah.
where the dilemma it lies. So, thank you.
I think the problem's probably bigger than like the bike
Yeah.
lane solves,
I
because
know,
it's
I don't
not a real
think
bike
that's a-
lane anyway.
It's not
It's a
really.
big-
Yeah, it's a.
Right.
It's a.
It's like a
It could be a
tricycle
much
lane.
better
People don't see
solution.
it, people don't see it.
It's
as a
like
bike
a
lane.
suicide lane, is what I call it. So, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would like to speak one
Are
more
there-
time if I could.
Sure.
Please.
And again, I'm Howard from 60 Woodward Heights.
Howard.
One of the suggestions I've made numerous times is put a no right turn for trucks on Woodward Avenue so they have a sign that says no right turn on to Woodward Heights. There's not a lot of effort into that. You made no right turn on several streets for everybody on this side of Woodward because of traffic issues on the west side. Put one on the Woodward Heights for trucks only, not for everybody, just trucks. If that helps cut down on 2 or 3 trucks, that's 2 or 3 less trucks we have come down our street. I know trucks are still going to turn right and come down our street, but it should cut down on them. And that would be a benefit. The parking on both sides of the street isn't going to stop the trucks that are cutting through. They're still going to cut through, and that's going to cause traffic problems, snarls and stuff. So I don't think parking on both sides is going to solve any issue. I think really no right turn for trucks, and just try and knuckle down on the times they come through. They come through weekdays from about 6 a.m. till about 7 p.m. They're mostly in the morning and mostly in the evening during rush hours. And that's basically what I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else with comments? Okay. Thank you. We'll move on to governmental reports, and it looks as though we just have the chief.
Evening, everybody. Welcome back.
Hi.
Welcome back, residents. Good to see people
I know.
in person for a change. First, I'll start with the fire chief, Teresa Robinson, apologized that she couldn't attend. She had a prior commitment with City of Ferndale business tonight. So she sent her condolences. I wasn't going to talk about Woodward Heights unless it was brought up, but I went and got from my office just some paperwork regarding that. A couple things. I've been here since 2006, August, and Woodward Heights has always been a priority as traffic enforcement, just because of the amount of traffic and the trucks and everything that goes there. It's always been, it's one of our probably top 5 traffic enforcement spots in the city. And like the city manager alluded to, it is the most highly enforced residential street in the city. Woodward gets a lot of attention, but there's a lot of traffic and accidents at Woodward and Main and 10 Mile and area, which take up a majority of our time as far as traffic problems. But Woodward Heights is second. I have a bunch of numbers, whatever, that I'll get to in a minute. When we do see trucks when we're there, and we're there a lot, the truck drivers we stop, many who are out of state and making deliveries, their navigation tells them to turn there. A sign that's posted or whatever, they're following their navigation. They're not going to pay attention to a sign. Although a sign may help, not opposed to signs. But you stop this truck driver who's from Tennessee or Kentucky or wherever they're from, making a delivery, and they're like, the navigation told me to turn there. This is my route. This is how I go. And I saw it afterward. I see the signs on Woodward Heights. No trucks coming from either direction, whether it's Woodward or Hilton. There's nowhere for them to turn around, especially a big 18-wheeler or a semi-truck. So backing up, some of them have tried, and backing up or trying to turn around causes more problems than driving through. So they try to get through, and when we see them, we stop them, and we write them tickets or warnings or just advise them and tell them, hey, be aware if you're making deliveries again in the future, don't take this route, take another route. I feel for them because if I'm that truck driver and trying to make a delivery, and this is what it tells me to go, it's the quickest route because we're all, what's the fastest route? You get options on your phone, and then you look and, oh, where are the red lines? I'm going to avoid that. And they choose, not knowing it's a residential street because they've never been here before, and now they're there, so they're stuck. So we continue to enforce and sit there. We sit there every day. These were all the tickets written in the last 3 months on Woodward Heights alone. There's 161 violations written to trucks and cars. Many of them for stop signs, many for the commercial trucks. In those 3 months, there were 904 total violations written throughout the city. 161 were written on Woodward Heights. And to whenever we're sitting there, and we sit there a lot, and I've sat there, you've seen me there, many of you have seen me there if you live there or drive through. Sometimes you sit there 45 minutes an hour, there's not a truck that goes by. And then you leave for another call or do other thing, because there are many other streets in town, and 8 or 10 trucks drives by. So it's the luck of the draw. When we're there, we try to do as best enforcement as we can. Our police department is small, there's only 8 officers, we're here 24/7, but there are other duties that we try to do. But it is the most highly enforced residential street in the city. We're open to anything that can do. I worked in the traffic bureau in Garden City prior to retiring there. Went to many traffic accident schools, engineering schools, things like that, as the city manager alluded to. 2 of the main 3 problems for error are driver error and engineering. So you can sit there all you want, but driver error, carelessness, and the engineering. So trying parking on both sides of the street or whatever, we can try, we're open to anything. But know that we do care, and we do sit there a lot. And if, you know, some of the other residents might go, hey, I don't see 161 tickets written on my street. When do we get our turn? So we try to be fair to everybody. So that's all I have to say about that. Anybody can call me, come see me, email me. I'm happy to talk to you about that. Lastly, I would just take a couple minutes. We hired a new police officer. He's standing in the hallway back there, unless you can see him. Officer Todd Tyler. Just brief history. Todd grew up in Berkeley and attended Berkeley High School. After graduating high school, he joined the Army. 8 years in the Army, including 2 overseas deployments, including Iraq and Kuwait. So thank you for your service. After returning from the Army, he went to the Detroit Police Academy, and he worked in the city of Detroit for a couple of years. And an opportunity presented itself to go work in Huntington Woods. I don't know why you'd leave Detroit to go to Huntington Woods, but God bless you. So he went there, where he worked for 25 years.
Wow.
He just retired there May in 2021, and the next day he was starting here.
Hey.
Welcome.
No time off.
Wow.
So we hired him here May 5th, 2021. Todd's married 35 years to his wife, so he's a devoted husband and family man. He has 2 adult children, a son who is currently a public safety officer in Berkeley. And his daughter also works at Berkeley as a dispatcher. So he has law enforcement in his blood in the family. He's very well respected in the area and community. Obviously working in Huntington Woods for 25 years, he knows this area. The transition was smooth, one of the quickest training programs there was for an officer here. I've already depended on him for advice and everything because he's smart, he's intelligent, he has experience. He's a valuable asset in addition to our city and our police department. We're extremely lucky to hire a police officer with Todd's capabilities and abilities and attributes, and we're thankful to have him. And with that, I'll let him come up and say a few words. Officer Todd Tyler.
I'm really happy to be here. I didn't take any time off. I wanted to keep working. I have plenty of years left to work, and I plan on staying here until I decide I've had enough. But that's years down the road. So you'll see me.
Welcome.
I'm so happy to
Thank you
have
very
you.
much.
A glutton
Thank
for
you.
punishment, I guess.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to City Commission liaison reports and start with Commissioner Wall, the Recreation Commission.
Okay, there's a lot going on.
Good.
So tomorrow is the ice cream social at the rec center, 6:30 to 8.
And the weather will be nice.
It will. I think it's actually not supposed to rain for the
Right.
first time in
Right.
God knows how long.
Right. Yep.
I wonder what flavors we're having. I think we're having a lot of flavors.
Let's just be
toppings.
surprised, right?
We're gonna be surprised. I'm not.
Okay, you're not gonna
I
blow
can't
it.
confirm or deny anything. It's all donated from Woodward Corners.
I have a lot of confidence. in
Wow,
ice cream
that's
social.
nice.
Very fun event. Should definitely come. Teen only swim night is happening right now.
What?
I can't believe the teens are swimming, but they are. 8 to 9, no guest passes, 7th grade and up. Adult only swim is July 15th and 29th, 8 to 9 p.m. Again, no guest passes. I guess to be an adult, you're 18 and older. That's what it says here. 2021 Youth Fall Soccer registration is underway, only a few spots left. Citywide garage sale is in late summer this year, August 7th, 9 to 11 at the rec center.
Oh,
It's,
maybe a typo.
yeah, okay.
Sorry.
No, actually, I read the wrong thing.
Okay.
So my fault.
Okay.
Citywide garage sale Saturday, August 7th. Signs are on sale now. I was mixing up. Sorry, apologize. Safety Day is also August 7th, same day as the garage sale, 9 to 11 at the rec center. That makes sense. PR Campout was rained out, so the rescheduled date is Friday, August 20th at 6 p.m. If you haven't done that, it's such a fun situation. The foundation is sponsoring that, so it's free for families. Dinner provided, breakfast provided, just the cutest thing ever. Travel Camp Week, August 9th. Blood Drive, Friday, July 30th at the Rec Center, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. I have some visuals.
Nice.
Cedar Point trip for the teens, $85, admission and transportation. This was the camp out one. Look how cute.
Oh.
The Ridger. I think we all are
You're getting
familiar with
good.
this. And I think that's a wrap.
Wow, very good.
A lot of exciting stuff.
Those visual aids really did it, didn't
I
they?
really pulled it together. I know.
Yeah. I did want to one more time thank Woodward Corners Market and our own
That's great.
our resident Natalie Rubino, who came to me saying they wanted to do something with the city,
That's so nice.
and we worked through and came up with the ice cream social as the way to do that, and I sicked them on Shawnee, and it's been.
Very easy to work with,
And we'll find out if it's a success tomorrow, right?
Yes.
So, but it's been great. They've really come
Come to the
forward.
table with
Yep,
ice cream.
Yep. Come to the table with ice cream.
Can I say one more thing?
You can.
This is a fun related situation, which is why I'm slipping it in here. We are having tailgate auction for the first time in the fall, in-person situation. Excuse me, what is my deal? October 9th at the Rec Center. So that's very exciting. So we're planning that. A lot of fun things going to be happening. So keep your eyes peeled.
Tailgate auction.
Yeah.
Sounds
There
fun.
you go.
Online bidding, which I think will be cool.
Yeah,
So
that'll
people
be
who maybe
good.
can't come can still bid on the items. But it's a
Excellent.
new format for us, but I
Good.
think it'll be a lot of fun.
Great.
Good. Thank you.
No, I'm
All
good.
right.
That's fun.
Next is Commissioner Budnick with Ferndale Public Schools and the Huntington Woods Library Board.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. Good to be back. Not much going on at Ferndale. That said, a couple exciting things. They are taking bids on a new pool and fitness center, which would be awesome for all the up-and-coming kids. Open enrollment was extended for middle and high school, and they just elected their new student representatives, which I always enjoy listening to. It's fun hearing the kids' perspective, especially going through such a bizarre year. So they just elected Eva May and Alaris Jones to represent each of the schools.
Great.
And that is about it for Ferndale. I don't have any visuals, Amanda. You're pretty.
A school.
The library, you're supposed to have some.
I know. Well, Mary and Stacy are nice enough to do the report for me, so I can't complain. I actually come up with the visuals. So Huntington Woods Library Board, presented by Mary and Stacy, or brought to you by Mary and Stacy. The library reopening has been going very well. As a reminder, 30-minute visits to browse, check out items, and use the computers are taking place Monday through Thursday, 11 to 7, and Fridays from 11 to 3. No reservation is needed, just come on in. The library director is also in the process of hiring a new youth services librarian, and we hope to have an update on that and a restarting of the children's programming very soon. And last, there are still several events this month for adults, including the ever-popular cooking class with Jane Alcon, another cooking class making, I'm going to botch this, sumai, with the famous chef, Chef Ming, the monthly book discussion group, and the Films About Film series with Dr. Tara Hayes, who this month will be reviewing Pain and Glory, starring Antonio Banderas and directed by Pedro Almodovar. They're testing me this first meeting back. To sign up for July events, go to the Huntington Woods Library page at huntingtonwoodslib.org or give them a buzz at 248-543-9720. And that is it, Mr. Mayor.
And just to add, the nice thing is you can now go into the library again.
Yeah,
So
which is great.
you're able
Great
to
asset.
walk in the door. I think they only give you 30 minutes and they kick you out. But nevertheless,
Yep.
it's better than just walking up and picking up your bag of books. So.
Yeah.
Okay, next, Commissioner Perry, Planning DDA.
Thank you. The Planning Commission and DDA did not meet this month, but they will be meeting next in
July.
July. Oh, okay, so it will be, this month, it'll be the 26th of July, on Monday. Will they be in person also?
Yes.
So we'll be right here on Monday, July 26th at 7 PM.
Okay.
Excellent.
Commissioner Scott, Historical
Got to me
Commission.
faster than I thought it
I
would.
know, I was going fast.
The Historical Commission meeting, the Historical Commission didn't meet in July. We'll meet again in September. Couple of things to remind people. If you're new to the neighborhood, the Historical Museum is available as a resource to see what might have been done to your house over time, or to drop a picture in of something that you've done. Every home has a folder, and it's just interesting to go in and see what exists, what has been said about your home in the past, see what it looked like in the past, and check it out. It's available to you. Reach out to one of the members of the Historical Commission or to me, and we'll set up a time for you to be there. We should be returning to the normal schedule of opening on Saturday mornings pretty soon. It just hasn't been scheduled yet. And then set aside in your calendar September 11 for our garden sanctuary tour. It's normally a home and garden tour, but homes are a little tough this year. And we've got a nice assortment of gardens set up for people to tour. It's going to be a great day. We've ordered good weather.
Good.
And looking forward
I
to
believe
seeing. Yeah, right. And looking forward to seeing everybody on the 11th. That's all I've got.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions for any? All right. Thank you all. Next item is the consent agenda. There are only 2 items on it. Very basic. I'm going to ask, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Your Honor, I move that the consent agenda be approved.
Is there su- okay. Any questions? May we have a vote, please?
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Next item is the marijuana facilities ordinance. We will start with the public hearing, but before the public hearing begins, Jim has a presentation, just to bring us up to speed on how we got here and where we're going.
Have to remember where to look.
I like it, I like it, I like it. This is,
Remember that?
yeah.
So yes, the marijuana facilities ordinance, how did we get here? You recall that the citizen initiated or ballot initiative went on the for statewide election and at the end of 2018, legalizing recreational marijuana. And as a result of that, the city, we did a fairly in-depth dive into whether or not we would allow these facilities. When I say facility, that's a recreational marijuana business. In the spring of 2019. And at that time, we decided we were going to opt out and not allow them. There were a lot of, and remain, a lot of uncertainties with the state law. More uncertainties under the recreational law than existed under the medical marijuana law. And so, given that we're a small community and didn't want to be a guinea pig for challenges or being the ones that are learning the ins and outs of this new thing, we opted out to wait and see what would happen to get a little bit more clarity on the regulatory environment before we decided what to do. In the meantime, what has happened is the recreational marijuana law allows for citizen-initiated ballot initiatives at the local level to establish for the number of marijuana establishments that are allowed in the community. Greg, is that precise enough with the language? So, that is a process that has started to be used. Last November, there were 4 communities we know of that had these types of ballot initiatives. And they passed in all 4 of the communities, Pinckney, Belleville, Port Huron, and then one other one that escapes me. Now, there's legal uncertainty connected to these ballot initiatives because the state law says that there can be a ballot initiative to establish the number of facilities that are allowed. It doesn't say anything about an ordinance creating an entire regulatory scheme, how you license, how you manage, where they go, what's permitted. The law is silent on that. So that's an uncertainty. With all of these ballot initiatives, there was an ordinance that was attached. There was language on the ballot that was very benign, even attractive sounding. But the ordinance, and I've reviewed 3 of the ones, Belleville, Pinckney, and Port Huron, that were passed, the ordinance is not friendly to the communities. The ordinances that were attached to these typically had very, very, very short windows by which the community had to approve licenses. 2 weeks, I think, in the case of Pinckney. They were very unclear on where these types of businesses could go. So basically, they weren't ordinances that were in the community's best interest. Pinckney then immediately turned around and repealed the ordinance that was attached to the ballot initiative and adopted their own ordinance, which contained the standards that they wanted to see for how you regulate these. Pinckney kept the number of establishments exactly the same. So when the voters approved, and I don't know what the exact numbers there were, but the voters approved 2 of this facility, 2 of this facility, 2 of this facility, they kept those numbers the same. Well, that was challenged by the group that had put the ballot initiative forth, and that's being fought out in the courts right now. We don't have clarity around that. So we've, there's been, I guess, some work being done in Pleasant Ridge to put a similar ballot initiative on our election for this coming November. So given that, we took a look at what all of the possibilities were. We knew that there were some regulatory uncertainties in the state law, and we wanted to wait for clarity on those. But at the same time, the opportunity of having an ordinance forced upon us with standards in it for how we regulate these uses and where they go that we didn't develop and we as a community didn't feel were appropriate, that wasn't attractive to us. So we're now proposing an ordinance that would allow for marijuana facilities in our community in locations and methods and processes and manners of our choosing to make sure that we are the ones who are saying, yes, okay, it's appropriate here. This is how we want it to operate. This is where we think it's appropriate based on our local experience, not with marijuana businesses, but just with businesses in general, and how those fit with the neighborhoods, and how, our history, particularly and specifically dealing with our Woodward Business Corridor and the neighborhoods which abut directly behind it. So the city regulations, the ordinance that's before you tonight, the specific things I want to talk about are how we regulate location, parking, the licensing process, and operating standards for marijuana facilities. And before we get into the specifics of the ordinance, including the number of facilities, what type of marijuana businesses we would allow, I think that one of the things that the mayor had been looking into is access to marijuana. Because I think one of the things we've heard, right, is one of the taglines is, well, Pleasant Ridge residents should have access to marijuana. Therefore, we should have businesses in our community that give you access to marijuana. So the state has a convenient map showing the location of all licensed marijuana facilities, and I think it highlights some things, so.
You may have to zoom in to see the name of the city with all the dots.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been doing my own tour, not necessarily stopping in or judging the quality of the product. But we have found that Ferndale, Hazel Park, and Madison Heights have all begun allowing businesses to set up. And my cursory driving around and looking on the websites and a number of other things showed me that right now we have 10 businesses, 10 recreational facilities operating within 3.5 miles of City Hall. 3 of them are within 1.5 miles, one of which is opening, the closest one is opening on August 1st. It's on the corner of East Drayton and Burdette in the in the Ferndale, in that back area. A lovely little place that they're building, and very nice. You've got two more within less than 2.5 miles, Gage, and a new one on 9 Mile called Hyatt. You've got Shango and New Standard in John R. Breeze on John R. All within 3 miles. Yeah, well, in case you're looking, I'll give you addresses, and I can't tell you how good or the prices, but that's within 3 miles, and there's a new building being built right by Breeze. It's called Rush. They're building new standalone buildings left and right. So you've got that. You've got a couple more in Hazel Park, Sky Mint and Common Citizen that are both within 3.5 miles. You now have, if you are a visitor to Costco, you will notice that the old bowling alley is now Liberty Cannabis, which is a huge facility. That's a standalone sitting there. You also, if you drive up John R. and you go to BJ's or you go to the Texas Roadhouse, just north of the Texas Roadhouse, what used to be an exercise facility, and then it was something else, that is now becoming Puff. That's another new recreational place. And I understand Royal Oak has 31 applications. They haven't put any out there, but they've accepted 31 applications for recreation. So what we're saying is we've got right now, presume about 15 facilities within a 4-mile radius of City Hall.
And Mr. Mayor, I think it'd be fair to say that Pleasant Ridge residents already enjoy much easier access to marijuana than they do Tylenol.
That's true. That's true.
actually.
It's true. It is a shorter walk.
I think
Shorter walk to Hilton than it is to 9 Mile to get to a CVS.
They don't deliver Tylenol.
Amazon does.
That's right.
I think you
Damn sure
probably,
pick it up.
I think you probably drive past 5 marijuana retailers on
It's
your way
hard.
to the drugstore now.
It's hard.
So
It's
our-
hard to miss them. Yeah.
I know our poor hard up residents who
Yes, I know.
can't possibly.
So the idea is that if you want it, it's certainly close by. You can walk, you can bike.
And
you can
I
drive.
think this map actually shows that the retailers in this part of the county where there's been a much higher adoption rate for marijuana facilities, there's probably a lot of marijuana store tourism coming from the northern suburbs. If you look at that map right
Yeah.
there where you have operating licensees.
You don't have to hit 8 Mile. You've got plenty of other options.
Right. However,
That's sad.
so our potential, and I guess for further ground laying, we did do a recreational marijuana business survey. We had nearly 400 Pleasant Ridge respondents, statistically significant response rate there based on our community population. We wanted to know why people were in favor of legalizing recreational marijuana. And basically, it was decriminalization and allowing personal use were the main reasons. And then you had a few more people who were not in favor of legalizing it. And then about a quarter of respondents said, well, I want a marijuana business in Pleasant Ridge and the tax revenue. We're not even going to talk about the tax revenue because it's so negligible as to be not really worth considering. So when we asked, are you in favor of allowing recreational marijuana businesses to operate in Pleasant Ridge, nearly 40% said, nope, never. About 30% said, yep, now, let's go. And then 30% were, maybe in the future, once we know more about, how the regulatory scheme goes. So this was a big reason why at the time we waited. We did ask if we allow marijuana businesses, how many should we allow to locate here? And 1 and 2 were the majority of respondents. We asked that we may not be able to limit, and we say we may not be able to limit where they go based on zoning. That's one of the questions. The recreational law has different language. It doesn't explicitly support zoning for these uses, but the Medical Marijuana Act does. And so our ordinance is structured that you have to have dual licensure. So if you have a recreational and a medical license in order to operate here, the medical license gives us the opportunity and the ability to zone very clearly. So 65% said that they would like to see these on the Woodward corridor, and I'm guessing none of those respondents actually lived near the Woodward corridor. But 95% of residents said the Iron Ridge District would be an appropriate location, so nearly unanimous thought that would be an okay location for these. So our ordinance now, how is it structured? What does it do? These are some of the major categories of marijuana facilities. Consumption establishments, that's basically like a marijuana bar. You go there and you smoke it. Growers, growing operations are a little more industrial in nature. It's basically your farming. So we're not really a farming community, and there's really nowhere large enough to support that. So we do not have any of those. And yeah, you can get into things. You have a lot of marijuana plants. If you've ever been over to somebody's house, maybe who's growing it in their basement, I don't know.
Does that happen?
But I hear that might be a thing, like
Legal.
sometimes you walk in the house and and that's just what plants in the basement. So growers is not something that we thought would be appropriate in Pleasant Ridge. Micro businesses, we would allow for one facility, and then retailers, processors, safety compliance, and transporters, 2 each. Now, why 2 each of these? Oftentimes what you'll see is co-location of licenses. You'll have a business that will hold more than one type of license. So they could have a retailer and a processing license, or a retailer and a compliance facility license, or a retailer and processing and safety compliance, just so they can do things in-house instead of buying in. Produce your own gummies instead of buying them in. So that's why we have 2 of each of those type. Really, retailers and provisioning centers are the ones that generate the off-site impact. Processors, compliance facility, transporters, they have their impacts, but they're more manageable. There'll be time for questions. Dual licensure. The ordinance requires that if an equivalent license exists in the medical and recreational acts, then the applicant must hold both types of license. And that will be one of the application criteria. And then, of course, co-location of licenses is allowed, as we just discussed. Where can these go? We have our commercial and our workplace zoning districts. I'll show you a map in a second. And I'll talk more about these neighborhood interface impacts that we've experienced from restaurants, from law offices, from other retail stores, not just marijuana facilities. These new marijuana facilities must be separated from a residential structure by 200 feet. And how do we measure that? And I know because I think we've gotten about 74 phone calls from people asking how you measure that. It's from edge of building to edge of building. So the building your marijuana business is in, the closest edge of that building to the closest edge of a residential structure, 200 feet. It's not from center of building to center of building. It's not from edge of zoning district to edge of zoning district. It's not any of that. It's not from the driveway. It's not from the parking lot. It's from the edge of the building to the edge of the building. And again, that's to mitigate business neighborhood interface issues. So when you look at the map, we have 2 potential locations for where those could go. We have a small area of commercial down here that meets those separation requirements, and then the Iron Ridge District, which is the pie-shaped or triangle-shaped piece in the northeast corner of town. The other major concern with these types of uses is parking. And we're very sensitive to parking because of our other businesses in town that generate a lot of parking. Cork created a lot of spillover parking on Fairwood. Cork created a lot of nighttime issues. After close, wine bottles being dumped in the dumpster, just natural things that happen with a restaurant business. But the fact that I think a 5-year-old could throw a baseball from Cork and hit the house next door, it's just, when it's right there, all of those issues are exacerbated. Cork has 4 off-street parking spaces. The rest of their parking occurs in public parking lots and on the street, so those are not spaces dedicated to them. So we saw a lot of spillover parking on Fairwood, and it was, it's a problem. When you live on Fairwood and people are coming out to their cars at 11 o'clock, midnight, that creates a lot of disruption. So if you count Cork's 4 off-street parking spaces and say 50% of the nearby public spaces that are on the street and in that public parking lot, that's 1 parking space for every 265 square feet of building area. The law offices, these were the law offices southeast corner of Woodward and Sylvan. We had an issue a few years ago where they were parking on Sylvan on the residential street. It was creating a lot of spillover parking. This is a law office. This isn't even something that generally generates a lot of parking pressures, but this one was. They're 5,400 square feet of law office. They have 9 of their own off-street parking spaces and then 18 shared adjacent public spaces. So they have 1 parking space for every 300 square feet. And again, we had to create a permit parking zone only for residents only on Sylvan to address this issue. The restaurant, formerly known as Maze, now known as Whistle Stop, was a particular issue when it was Maze. It's less of an issue now that it's Whistle Stop, and that's a clientele. And again, this points to the fact that you can have a restaurant, but this restaurant attracts this particular clientele, and this restaurant attracts a different clientele, and it has very different. It can have a different level of impact. But they have no on-street park or no off-street parking spaces of their own. There are 11 shared adjacent public parking spaces. We actually do allow parking on both sides of the street on this segment of Amherst just because of the restaurant being there. There is a public parking space to the north. This is where the restaurant's located. This is a public parking lot, but you can see even from this aerial photograph, we've got law offices and a dentist right here. And then we've also got office buildings to the north who are also using this parking lot. So there's a lot of pressure on our public parking spaces. We have a lot of complaints about the patrons of this restaurant parking further down Amherst, blocking driveways, getting in the way of people. It's generated a lot of police calls over the years. So we're very sensitive to, what the impact of that can be. What we know is even if you have a public parking lot that's very close to the building, if there are visible parking spaces on the neighborhood street close to that, people park there. People park on the neighborhood street, no question, even if there's ample available parking further up on Woodward or in the public parking lot. So we know this. We've experienced it. We deal with it. This restaurant has one parking space, if you count those shared adjacent spaces, for every 163 square feet. So they actually have more parking than Cork did, but this restaurant, they pack them in a lot tighter. The tables are smaller. There's a counter in there. So, not everything is equivalent, but when you look at the Ferndale facilities, these are the major ones that are currently operating. I got this data from the city of Ferndale. These are the ones who have been in operation for a while. Probably the one to look at here is Live, because Live has one space for every 180 square feet. And that's less parking than the other facilities have. And according to the city of Ferndale, Live is the one site where they actually do have some parking stresses. They've changed how they operate and how they flow traffic through their parking lot in response to some of that. They don't let you come in off Hilton anymore, and now you're supposed to go to that street that's in the industrial park. And some of that may be pandemic related and bringing things out to cars, but that is the area. And this is Live, and you can see it's a much larger, nowhere in Pleasant Ridge has an off-street parking lot like this. And they have some stresses at one parking space for every 180 square feet. So there's not parking on Woodward to accommodate these. We know there's going to be spillover impact. So that's another reason of having that buffer separation requirement. And by the ordinance we also adopt that says if you're going to have one of these facilities, you have to have at least one off-street parking space per 200 square feet, which is less than Live has. But you have to have that in your own private lot that you control that's for you. So not only do you have to have the separation requirement, but, I think very reasonably so, these businesses need to have their own parking to handle the parking impact that they create. Other ordinance provisions: signs cannot contain marijuana leaf images or any of the following terms or slang terms for marijuana. We have nuisance provisions in place to prevent smells and odors, for filtration, for other things to make sure that we don't have the Burger King effect of living next to your charbroiled smell all day. Might have lived near a Burger King at a college apartment one time.
Obviously,
brought back
you
a
haven't,
memory.
you
Somebody's
haven't forgotten
traumatized by Burger King.
something that has lived with you.
Triggered something.
They say smells trigger memories more than anything else, right? So, our allowed hours of operation are 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. And then by the ordinance says that the city commission by resolution sets the date on which we'll start accepting applications. We have a motion in front of you that would recommend September 15, 2021. If approved tonight, that would be the date we'd start accepting applications, to give us time to get our application packages ready to just get ready for, hopefully not the 37 applications, but certainly a good number of applications that we'll get. And then, these are just the maps we've already shown. There is a clarifying, today I was working with Greg Need about a clarification to one section in the ordinance. It's not changing any of the intent or the effect of the regulations, but
Does it change the motion?
it does, and there should be a sample motion. Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay, see it. Yep.
Where's it? On the, or
Yeah,
It's on the
we have
new-
the
oh,
language.
yeah.
Yeah.
We printed out that language.
Yep.
oh, I'm writing on it.
Got it here, though.
Yeah. So it's the license fees.
Right.
It's just clarifying language about the application and then the renewal license fees. Cleanup language, it's not a major change, but that is reflected in your motion.
Gotcha.
And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the commission
we go to-
before we open the
before we
public
open-
hearing.
Are there any questions for Jim?
I do, yeah, thank you. Jim, with the, I know with the application process, that's been one of the hurdles that different cities have had, because it was so broad. Have there been any, like, clarifications that have come into play that have helped cities navigate that process in a more,
Well, I think what you're referring to is the Berkeley case.
yes?
Because Berkeley was sued on a procedural standpoint, and actually Greg Need, City Attorney Need, has a lot of experience. Why don't you being involved in that?
Berkeley was sued by, they had something like 30 applicants, 3 were selected through a point process, and many of the unsuccessful applicants brought suit. They sued claiming that the ordinance was invalid because it conflicted with the state law, largely because they had several criteria as to how the city would select applicants, and it included things like community benefit and items like that that aren't found in the state law. It went to the circuit court. The city had actually appointed me as a hearing officer to hear the appeals from the unsuccessful applicants. And about an hour and a half before our first hearing, a judge issued a temporary injunction stopping the whole process. They then went through and briefed the issue, and ultimately the circuit court held that the ordinance was valid. Even though it had additional criteria beyond the state law, that was allowed. They did hold that the city violated the Open Meetings Act because the scoring process, which was done by the city manager, was not done at a public meeting. Don't ask me to explain that, but that's what the ruling was. So actually tomorrow, the city manager is going to have a public meeting in Berkeley, at which point he will announce the scores, which may be the same score, but they may be different, I don't know, and the process will go forward. It's a circuit court case. It's not binding because it's not a decision of the court, of the statewide published decision of the Court of Appeals, but at least that's one judge in Oakland County that ruled in favor of the community. Detroit, you may have seen there, an injunction was placed on their ordinance by a federal judge. That ordinance is substantially different than this one in terms of their criteria, so I don't really think that necessarily is applicable here. But again, this is still uncharted territory legally. Until you have a published decision from the Court of Appeals or Supreme Court, we don't have assurance. Following up on one of Jim's points, the Pinkley lawsuit actually is no longer pending. It was settled. It didn't go to a final decision, but the city or the village reached an accommodation with the plaintiffs. I think they kept the city ordinance in place to increase the number of available licenses, and that was the basis of the settlement. So because it was settled, that's not binding precedent anywhere. And there were a couple of orders from the Court of Appeals last fall during the election process that actually were in favor of the communities, where judges refused to put the issue on the ballot because it conflicted, because the ordinance that was being proposed by the petition signatures was beyond just the number of facilities. But those were Court of Appeals orders. Those aren't precedent, those aren't binding. So it gives a little comfort in the community's legal position. So that answer the question?
I think so, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
No?
Okay. You're good? All right, with that, I'm going to open the public hearing. Please come forth as we did in public discussion. Give us your name and address.
Hi, my name's Mikhail Lenko in 32 Oakland Park Boulevard. I just, clarification on one of the slides, there was a term micro business, and I didn't know what that meant. There was a number 1 next to it. There were a few with zeros and twos.
I'm not entirely clear what a micro business is either.
that you went quickly.
Yeah.
That was the one I kind of skipped through.
I think it has to do with, the volume and I think they can do like some artisanal growing, but typically they're very small and manageable.
They can sell, but it's 150 plants or less.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
But they can only sell to certain people,
They,
right?
they can sell to individuals and not other
Right.
establishments.
Right.
Okay.
Is that-
Yeah,
That's about as close as we can get.
That's awesome.
All right.
Hi,
Yes.
good evening.
Hello.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. My name is Michael Woodyard. I'm an attorney, and I represent the organization known as Vote Compassion for Pleasant Ridge Committee. There's a number of people who are involved with it who are residents and are interested in this, and we wanted to say that we're very happy that the city is taking a look at this and doing making such an extensive effort to adopt an ordinance, because we think that if you look at the results of the Proposition 1 vote in 2018, it was something like 80% of people in Pleasant Ridge who voted on that issue voted yes. I think demonstrating a pretty clear interest in having the availability. Mr. Mayor, as you were going through the walking
Yes.
tour of the
Yeah.
area facilities, you said Costco. I thought, wait a minute, does Costco now sell marijuana?
Then everybody closes.
We're all
There you
done.
go.
We're all done now. Yeah, and so I'm glad to hear that that wasn't the case. I guess as I read through the ordinance, I wanted to, if I could just mention that, a lot of people think lawyers love to sue people. That's not necessarily the case. I think that people love to sue other people and lawyers like to help people. So there's always going to be the possibility that the passage of an ordinance occasions litigation. And I think that that's something that you have obviously paid attention to as you proposed and draft the ordinance in question. A couple of things that I thought, as I read through it, that I would just bring to your attention for your further consideration, in hopes, frankly, that they'll be addressed before you vote to adopt the ordinances. As is pointed out, there are requirements that a licensee hold both the medical and the recreational license. And under the state statute governing the recreational, there's a requirement that if there's more, if the number of places are limited, then a competitive process is put in place to select the license awardee. That's addressed in your ordinance in section 18.295. As I read it through, it appears to me that the concern that I would suggest is that the terms are many of them are amenable of various different interpretations, and the concern that I would see is that it opens up the possibility that there will be extensive litigation, as I'm sure your city attorney knows, and I'm sure the city manager knows, that as they call the sore loser litigants, they're very interested in bringing lawsuits. I know that in Berkeley that was certainly the case, and virtually everywhere else. So when you have a list of standards like that are qualifications of the applicant, or financial benefit to the city, things that are somewhat vague, it raises, certainly in my mind, the possibility that there would be a great deal of litigation around those. The other real clear issue for me that I see is the question of the zoning. And I really appreciated the opportunity to see the presentation, Mr. Manager, about why these areas were selected and how it's going to fit within the various business corridors in the city. I guess it appears to me that the Iron Ridge location obviously is going to be one of the only areas that a marijuana business might locate. And this goes back to the question of competitiveness again, because if there's one business owner who owns the facility where a business might be located, and a potential marijuana businessman goes through the licensing process with the city and is granted a license, and then goes to that person to say, I'd like to lease a facility, or I'd like to buy a space within the Iron Ridge here, and they say no, because I don't want that kind of business here, then that kind of, it seems, would put the kibosh on the question of whether it's really competitive or not. And I don't know the answer. I'm the first to acknowledge when I don't know something. I don't know what the owner of Iron Ridge intends to do in terms of opening up that area to the retail or the sale of medical marijuana. I don't know. Maybe they're amenable of it, maybe they're not. But I think that zoning the available space to such a narrow location raises the question. And I also had the opportunity to look on the Michigan Economic Development Corporation website, and I see that the Iron Ridge facility is a development that MEDC has been funding. And in that website, they indicate that there's 75 apartments, at least intended. I don't know if that's how it's all going to shake out, but 75 residential apartments, and I don't know whether or not with this 200-foot setback, if any type of marijuana business would even physically be able to fit there. And I know in the ordinance it says that the numbers permitted will be limited based upon the availability within the zoned areas. So theoretically, if the area is 0, the number is going to be 0. And the other thing, and I don't know the answer to this question either, but I don't know if whether MEDC grants come with strings that limit the type of business that might operate on an MEDC property. I don't know if MEDC gets federal money, which comes with strings that might limit the type of business that operates on an MEDC property. So again, I think it's awesome that you're considering it. I think clearly there's a desire among the citizens, not just in Pleasant Ridge, but across the country or across the state, and it appears across the country to increase the availability of legally available marijuana for medicinal purposes and now recreational purposes. We'd love to see it done in a way that limits litigation and creates the opportunities as quickly as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment? Or do we want to finish listening?
A motion first.
We'll take a comment.
Take a
You
comment?
Specifically, yeah.
I just want to point out that what was just mentioned about people voting to legalize marijuana in this community does not necessarily equate people wanting it sold in this community, because I've had a lot of people who live in this community approach me about not wanting marijuana sold. As Kurt demonstrated and showed on the map, access is not a problem for people in this community. So I'm really struggling to see the benefit that would bring to our community. Parking, traffic on Woodward. So I just wanted to say that out loud. The survey results, what did it say? 70% or 68% said that they voted for it to decriminalize it, and of course people can make their own decision to smoke it if they want. That doesn't necessarily mean that people want it in their community and want it sold here. I just wanted to make that point.
And I think the zoning comments, it's a real challenge. Pleasant Ridge is half a square mile. We're not like a normal community, and applying a lot of these things to, where we have literally 4 acres of land that's zone C total in the entire city. Costco is multiples of that.
Right.
So saying that, so that's a real challenge, and saying like, well, we've got this single owner. Our W district is 6 acres. We're not talking about huge amounts of land here. The rest of the community is single-family residential. I can say that the apartments are in Ferndale. They're more than 200 feet away from any of the buildings, and our part, Iron Ridge, that development crosses city boundaries. So it works. It's allowed there. What we come down to is when we look at the offsite impacts and what we hear from our residents, who we have to represent, about the concerns and the experience we have with businesses, Iron Ridge is the place that can legitimately house these types of uses and keep the potential offsite impacts within their site boundaries. And it's not, that's what we have to live with, because we've got less land area than you know, almost anywhere zoned commercial. But yet we're subject to all of the same state laws and everything else, which we can be, you know, which we can have happen to us through the ballot initiative process. So, you know, yeah, the zoning question, it's a tough one, no doubt. And, you know, all of those legal standards you apply, it's a different
different
environment and a different situation here, just based on the community and size of the nature and size of our community.
Commissioner Scott?
Yeah, I think it's worth saying that, setting aside how you feel about marijuana, we would be having many of these conversations about a Starbucks or a Burger King or anything that had high traffic flow, would impact parking, might be a noise issue. It's very similar issues. So I know a lot of people have different feelings about marijuana, but set that aside and just think about what it would mean to have a high traffic business less than 200 feet from your house. And we're doing everything that we can to manage the ones that we have in our neighborhood already. We know what those issues are like for our neighborhoods, and we have for decades. We're still dealing. And we're managing that through this ordinance for this particular kind of business.
Hello.
Hi.
Christy McAuliffe. I'm at 6 Fairwood. Thank you for having me here. I've stood at this podium a number of times over the years. It started when Cork was in question. Different set of commissioners. And I am incredibly grateful that Cork is owned by Cork. As you said earlier, it depends on the business. Who owns it? Mays to Whistle Stop was a huge shift in ownership. It made all the difference to the residents. Not that those struggles don't continue. Cork has been spectacular for us from the beginning. Unfortunately, at that time, a commissioner, as I stood at a podium, I think at the rec center at the time, said, "You knew where you bought." Well, I bought behind an architectural design firm. I did not buy behind a wine bar. But Cork has made all the difference of making sure they cared about us, and we have long sat at their bar. Regarding this, 80% of residents did vote for this out of compassion, decriminalization, etc. I too live in this neighborhood and have many, many times sat at a dinner table with people doing edibles, people drinking, and I would agree that this is not an issue so much of, I want this to be closer, like I can walk a block.
Right.
We're an active community. We fight for biking lanes, we are pedestrians. So part of me is like, what are my needs as being several doors off Cork and having to struggle with parking issues when they come up, but being able to walk into Cork and say to the manager or floor person, hey, I've got someone parked halfway in front of my driveway, and Cork responds like that. We'll walk to every table, find out who it is, and we'll get that car moved. Great. So I'm struggling with, why do we need this in our, why is so much time, energy, and resources being taken up? No offense against our resources, but why are we taking so much time with this? Every business, as Commissioner Scott has said, like every business has to work within the parameters. Why are we treating this subject as if somehow we have to be more delicate about it? Because it's weed? I don't care. So, you know, as you can guess, I am not in favor of this being 2 doors down from my house, so thank you for the 200 feet. I don't want more traffic. I already have an alley with a stop sign that people run all the time, and I have a 10-year-old. Simple as that. I don't care if it's Cork. I don't care if it's a weed. I don't care. I want less cars on my street. We are a community of residents. As far as being a narrow location, it should be. It's a high-traffic zone, whether it's a Starbucks, whether it's whatever. It is a high-traffic business. Keep it off my street. Simple as that. The gentleman that were here earlier complained about Woodward Heights. We already deal with so much traffic. Please, we live in an urban area. We all know that. It's great because I can walk. I appreciate you doing your scouting. I've stood in that line on Hilton.
Which one?
And I stood in it because I walked or I biked.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So I struggle with my needs versus the community needs, but the community needs are satisfied in less than a mile. It takes me, with Tony's being the one exception, I have to walk farther to get a beer or a drink than it is to get an edible. Cork's not open right now, so my argument is, so I have a little bit of escape. Yeah.
We understand, yeah.
But, so, so thank you for this ordinance. I have no issue if it goes into Iron Ridge. It makes sense for parking. I own a business in this community. I have had the conversation because we have had a place on Woodward, like how many, I have to fill out the thing every year of how many employees do you have, how many cars, how many parking spots do you need. I had to work within the parameters. I do not think a weed business should be treated any differently than I am as a business. If I have too many employees, if I need too many parking spots, my business is not allowed to function in the city. I don't get it. And this has taken up so many of our resources, and there is not a viable tax level from this income.
It's the benefit.
Yeah, and we are more liable. So I don't understand. I do think we are a community that is progressive in its thoughts on weed. At least that's my experience. So I don't think it's necessarily bias against it as whether it should be legal or not. I do think this should be treated like any business. The gas station, I've sat here while the gas station asks for things and how it works and why is this different? So, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there any other, Amy, I know we've gotten some responses from,
Received 3 comments prior to the meeting. First comment was from a resident at 8 Fairwood. He's asking the commission do everything legally possible to prevent facilities from operating on Woodward Avenue and Pleasant Ridge. He cited parking issues, odor issues, and light pollution caused by the businesses. The next is from a business owner and resident. They own a business at 24280 Woodward Avenue, and they also live on Oxford. They are worried about signage and fencing that could affect the character of the community. If there's already retail businesses in downtown Ferndale, why are they necessary in Pleasant Ridge? And they would like to see it away from the central business district on Woodward Avenue and explore the Iron Ridge facility. And the third one is from a resident, 60 Oakdale. They would also like the business to stay off of Woodward as it's a neighborhood, adjacent to the neighborhood, and that the Iron Ridge area makes more sense for that type of facility.
okay, great. Thank you. Are there any other questions from the
Mayor,
Commission?
just
Yeah.
one other question. There was some mention of competitive bidding, and if am I correct to say that we've not to date had an issue of competitive bidding on liquor licenses?
Liquor licenses operate differently
Mhm.
because these are new license. The competitive process is when we open up and say, okay, we're going to issue our marijuana facility licenses. You can have 30 applications for that. I guess there's some instances, there are some special types of liquor license that could be comparable. But I think at this point, the portable licenses or the quota licenses are all pretty much spoken for.
Got it.
So you have to go out on the market and buy those from another private entity.
Right.
Or transfer it from somewhere, So they have a dollar value, those licenses.
Right.
There are some licenses that the community could create, I think, under the DDA Act or Corridor Improvement Authority Act that can't be transferred, so they have less value, and theoretically you could have a competitive process for those, but I think it's just, that's such a well-established market that you don't see those issues.
Got it.
We're still in the gold rush.com,
Right.
whatever you want to call it, of the marijuana business. So there's just a lot of,
Okay.
because it's brand new.
Got it. Thank you.
Are there any other comments from the audience? Okay, with that, I will close the public meeting. Move on to consideration of the marijuana facilities ordinance. Is there anything else to discuss before I ask for a motion? All right, well, then I will ask for a motion to approve the ordinance.
Mayor, I move the ordinance 445 regarding marijuana facilities be adopted, subject to the revision of section 18-294D, 1 and 2, as presented to the commission and read in the meeting, and further that the city begin accepting applications for licenses on September 15th, 2021.
Is there support?
Support.
Any further discussion?
Mayor? And, this is one of those things where we were not, I don't think this was definitely on my agenda for us to start working on a marijuana ordinance, and I think many of us feel the same way. I think I appreciate what the city manager and the city attorney have helped us do, because it helps protect us as a city so that it'll be an ordinance that is in the best interest of the residents, and that we'll be able to reflect what the views are, even if the views change from the residents. It's like, it will be a body of people who have that interest at heart. And so thanks you guys for working on this and knowing so much. That's all.
Mayor, can I make
Yes.
a quick comment too? I wanted to say the same thing as Ann. I was not for this. I said this when we discussed it. I mean, this is just, but I would rather be in control of what's happening in our community and set the standard as opposed to letting some business, outside business, tell us what we need to do. So I just wanted to say that.
You're here.
Yeah, and all
That's
the legal hurdles that are still just waving out there. Okay,
Exactly.
sorry.
Okay. With that, I will ask for the vote, please.
Commissioner Perry?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott?
Yes.
Commissioner Budnick?
Yes.
Commissioner Wall?
Yes.
Mayor Metzger?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you. Next item is the city manager's report.
Not much. We had the supplemental brush pickup today from the storms last week. Regular loose brush pickup is still going to happen next week.
Okay, great.
So if you have more, if you got weekend,
always more.
if you've got
Yes.
weekend plans this weekend,
Yeah.
go ahead and put it out. I did get word finally that the touch-up work on the Woodward Heights striping is happening next week.
All right.
That's good news.
And also the crosswalks
Let's hope
that we
the-
put in last
hope
winter are
the
finally
weather-
going to get striped as well.
Yeah.
It takes forever to get those stripers
Yes.
out. And I think that's it.
I appreciate you pursuing.
Well, that's
No
big
joke.
news.
Pursuing the pace.
That is big news.
Did any of the commissioners have any questions?
How are we looking on the pavilion?
It's looking good. I went over there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were supposed to be doing concrete this week, but I'm sure the weather has, like everything, backed them off. But all the brickwork is done. Concrete's going down. And then there's just the final painting and details that need to go in. There's some metal work for the grates. But, if you go over there now, you can definitely
Yeah.
get a
You
sense
know
for
what- yeah.
what it's going to feel like. That's a lot of brick.
Yeah, that's
It's a lot of brick.
Really cool.
That's a lot of brick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's, I think it's kind of, I like
It's gonna
it.
be,
Like how it turned
It'll be
out.
fun.
Looks cool.
Yeah. And you're going to need to build a big fire.
Put a
I was
little
gonna say,
grate in the
wow.
middle of it.
It's not
Can we
really
bring
a
a whole lamb?
it's not really a fireplace. It's a bonfire place.
Yeah,
So I don't know. We're gonna have to think about how we handle
Yeah.
to borrow a term from Amanda, that whole situation.
Yeah, people come by and go, what the hell is that thing?
I think we're gonna have to have like a wood pile or something like
Yeah.
that people can
Oh, yeah, that's right.
because I don't know.
I guess I'm gonna be selling wood.
Yeah, if you go to the gas station and buy the little bundles,
Yeah,
that's
yeah, that
gonna
can get pretty
look a little
expensive.
out of place.
It's a lot of money there.
Funny.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
No questions for Jim, okay.
That one.
Then the final item is other business. We got anything else? Nothing? Got nothing?
Amy always
thought I
does.
have-
Amy's got, yes. Oh, good.
Nominating petitions for mayor and city commissioner are still available. They're available until July 20th. They have to be returned by July 20th at 4 p.m.
Okay.
There is a window for write-in candidacy if you choose to do that after, but the normal process is they're due July 20th, 4 p.m. Takes 25 signatures.
Okay.
I have the packets available at City Hall. I have one commission packet turned in and one mayor packet turned in.
Okay, very good.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
All right. No questions for Amy? All right. I'm going to ask, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mayor,
Yes.
I make a motion for us to adjourn.
Support?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.
Okay.
Give me the nod, Mr. Mayor. I got one. I appreciate that.